So for those who have issues so far, any questions? Okay, we're all clear that we're talking about innovations. These are usually technological innovations, and we're talking about ideas, new ideas. And these new ideas become new technologies, and new technologies lead to more economic wealth. So I will continue with this whole semester long. There is always this cycle of new ideas, technology, both military and otherwise, technology. And that's going to lead to more economic development. As there's more economic development, there will be more state building. More state building will lead to more organized economy and more wealth. So these themes will keep going, okay? Always remember the yin-yang figure, the Pokemon figure. Always remember the figure, okay? So all of the system in this historical background is portrayed from that perspective. I could have picked different events as well. I didn't, because what I want to show you is this cycle, okay? Is this mutual relationship between state building, economic development, and technological revolutions, all right? That's why I'm focusing on these. Now, like I said, patent law led to newer ideas, more ideas, so that you're actually earning credit or money for your ideas. And then next thing you know is expansion to the new world. Well, like I said, Marco Polo was in 1200s, he was already going around and he was bringing his stories back and also the new technologies back. But by 1492, we have the expansion to the Americas. Why is this important? What happens when the people start expanding to the Americas? What will happen then? What? More people will go. So that's going to result first in migration, right? And that's also going to result in permanent migration in colonies. Virginia colony, right? The first colony. So what else does that lead to? Who lives in the Americas? And when I say Americas, I mean both North America and South America. There are civilizations there, right? Aztecs? I heard, yes. Okay, so there are different civilizations, and those civilizations are actually quite advanced, and they collapse as a result of colonization of the Americas. And how about North America? You have the Indian population there, and an interesting fact, again, here is disease. What happens? How do the Indians die? Well, they get killed. Other than that,
they give them blankets with smallpox.
Well, there's the rumor that smallpox is used to get rid of the Indians. Well, I would argue that even if it is not done on purpose, I would argue that disease once again leads to huge annihilation in that society. Remember the Black Plague and how it's actually washed away huge populations in the world? Well, smallpox, this is something that we all, you know, are protected from as we're children, right? So it's not something that should kill anyone. But something as small as smallpox or measles led to huge populations of the Indians in in North America die. So the international system is a consequence of unintended and intended consequences, and disease is part of it. So the expansion to the New World leads to disease, leads to annihilation of civilizations, and it also leads to the colonies, establishment of colonies in the Americas, both in South and North America. Now, colonization is important. Why? Remember, last week when I was introducing the course to you, I said, who do you think is the most powerful country in the world? Some of you said the US, some of you said China, but you know, the more you expand, the stronger you got, right? So when economy depended on expansion in the 15th century, the more you expanded, the more powerful you got. So the fact that the Americas were colonized by the Europeans is one of the reasons why the answer to who's the strongest now, or who's the most powerful country now, is, okay? So the answers that we're looking for go back to this that I'm portraying to you, okay? The background, historical background that I'm portraying to you. Now, as this colonization is going on, you have another major important historical development, which is the Reformation. Everyone in this room, I know, knows about Reformation. History of civilization classes, all the history classes you took in your high school years, they all talked about a guy named Luther, okay? And Reformation was actually a scholarly debate. A scholarly debate is, you know, as an academic, a scholar, I talk to you and I say, oh, you know, I think, you know, the Catholic Church maybe can change in these different ways. And then this debate, with the help of the printing press, becomes something different, okay? So we can talk, and then as we have mediums such as Facebook, Twitter, and all other internet communication tools, what I say in class can actually be heard from far, far away. That's kind of what, well, in a smaller scale, of course, there's no internet at the time, that's kind of what happens to Luther, okay? Luther starts a scholarly debate, and there are guys like Calvin and Zwingli and Knox in the debate. And so this debate about religion, the Catholic Church, and how the Catholic Church is treating people becomes a huge debate. And later on, rulers in the world, well, in Europe at the least, becomes threatened by that debate, right? So this is actually, Reformation actually leads to several changes. One of these is related to Henry VIII. Anyone who heard about Henry VIII? Protestants? Okay, so with the Reformation, there will be a division between the Catholics and the Protestants. So Christianity will be divided into sects. But with Henry VIII, things will go to a whole new level. No one ever heard of Henry VIII? Have you heard of the movie Anne Boleyn? Boleyn Girl?
That's Henry IV.
Some people say yes. Scarlett Johansson, come on. I know you heard of her, right? You know who she is. So the movie is about the woman who led to huge changes. Well, it's not exactly the woman who led to huge changes in the English church, but also other things such as Henry VIII was unwilling to share his power with the church. And Henry VIII was not very happy with the extent of power of the Catholic Church. And at the same time, we all know that the Catholic Church did not let Henry VIII to get a divorce from Catherine. Now, do you now remember the story? The English guy does not want to stay in the marriage, and he decides to get a divorce, but the Roman Catholic Church says no. Yes?
That's Henry
Henry VIII.
Who was married with Catherine of Spain?
Yes. No, Catherine and Henry VIII are married, and then Anne Boleyn is the woman that Henry VIII really wants to get married to, but the church doesn't give him a divorce, and as a result, he gets the divorce by establishing the Anglican Church, his own church. And another thing is, well, I'm going to get into the sadder details. After a while, Anne Boleyn and Henry do not get along so well, and poor Anne Boleyn is executed due to adultery and other charges. And then Henry VIII actually marries someone else. And then this woman, I think also he gets a divorce from that woman as well. And then he gets married to Anne Boleyn's cousin in the end. So it's a sad story. It's not a story that you should remember. But it is a story that shows you that little things in the system leads to changes. And one thing that changes here is the whole church system in England. Okay? A new sect as Anglicanism is created, not exactly because of love affairs of Henry, but because Henry is not happy sharing his power with the church. Okay? And as a result of this new church, another interesting thing happens, and that is he starts selling the land that he confiscated from the church. He starts selling that land to the nobles, okay? So what makes you noble? Orkun is noble today in this classroom because you're wealthy, you have a lot of money, and you come from a family related to the king or queen, me. And what I do is I confiscate the land that belongs to the church, and now I have all this land, but I don't have money. So what I do is I sell the land. As I sell the land to you, Orkun, what would you want from me? You have all this land now, and
A new title.
you want a new title. Okay, you're already a sir now. So what else do you want? Protection from the king. What else? Place in the king's court. What does that mean? Do you want a parliament? You want a parliament. By the time that you have power and you're helping me to the queen, the king, you actually want more power. You want to be able to vote for things that I decide. Before that, I make a decision and you obey the decision, right? But as I actually get money from you, the nature of our relationship started changing, and now the nobles want, from the English king, the nobles want more vote or a more democratic structure, okay, in the state. So this is very important because the whole system is affected by this. It doesn't only happen in England. It happens in other places too. It probably will happen in several places in the world that are still not democratic. But as you give more to the autocrat or the ruler, then you will want more from that ruler. And usually you will want more rights from that ruler. Okay? So that's kind of what happens after the Reformation. There are unintended consequences of Henry's love affairs and Henry's wanting to have more power, and Henry's desire to not share his power with the church. Okay? So, like I said, luck is one thing, unintended consequences are another thing. So when we proceed with the course, you're going to see that a lot of things will take place as a result of unintended things that kings and queens and statesmen do, and ordinary people do as well. Okay? So this example, the Henry's divorce example, is one example for that. Now, as you sell more land, you are actually contributing to state building, okay? So as you share your power with people, you're actually contributing to state building. Next important thing that I'm going to touch upon is the 30 Years' War. Guys, it's in bold, okay? So far, none of the items were in bold. This one is. So that means this is important, right? 30 Years' War, you've heard of in your IR classes before, or from European history classes before, if you took the history of civilization classes. What's the importance of 30 Years' War? Why do these guys fight for 30 years? Okay, religion is part of it. Structure of Europe changed. France, okay, was involved. Who else was involved? Who is the most important actor here? Have you heard of Holy Roman Empire? Okay. This is not the Roman Empire. This is a Holy Roman Empire. It's wholly different than the Roman Empire. Okay? Holy Roman Empire is a collection of cities and different areas, but what we call Germany now is a huge part of it. Okay? And this actually becomes a war of many things. It's not just a religious war, but religion is part of it. Prestige. Exactly, prestige is part of it. Power struggle is part of it. And so it's the Catholics versus the French are the Catholic, and the Holy Roman Empire is the Protestants, part of it. So there are so many different things. Land grabbing, territory grabbing is part of it. So there are several causes of the war. But what really matters for us, for our purposes, is not really the causes of the war, but the consequence of the war. As a result, you actually said that the structure of Europe changed. What else? How did the structure of Europe change? What important concept? Nation, nation state. What really important concept? IR concept. Self, what? Okay, let's think about it.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty, okay. Really important, right? Well, these days, some people say sovereignty, nobody cares about sovereignty anymore. But at the time, the Peace of Westphalia that followed two treaties by the end of the 30 Years' War led to a decision by the European nations. First, they said, hey, we keep fighting, a lot of people are dying. And we don't want that, because as people die, agriculture goes bad. Remember everything that I've told you so far for the last hour. You know, people die, agriculture gets worse, economy gets worse. And when economy gets worse, you can't, you know, do anything that you like in terms of luxury stuff. You can't innovate as much. So technology goes bad. So when people fight, a lot of negative things happen. So Europe fought several wars. Remember 100 Years' War? We talked about it last hour. So after 30 Years' War, states decide that it's not a very good idea to fight all the time. So maybe we should not interfere in each other's domestic affairs. Religion is accepted as a domestic affair, so religion should not be a cause of war in Europe was one of the things that they learned from this incident. So we should not interfere with each other, okay? And sovereignty means you mind your own business as a state and you don't get interference from outside states. So this norm of sovereignty is established by Peace of Westphalia after the 30 Years' War. Why is this important?
Created a current international system.
Now you're actually trying to establish an international system, right? Remember I said international system is an imaginary thing. It's hypothetical, right? It's something that we imagine so that we can organize what's going on in international affairs. So with the norm of sovereignty, these guys actually realize that we have to structure things. Like Mehmet said, right? We have to structure Europe in such a way that we should spend our energy in creation of new technologies and wealth. This is important because this is actually an answer to the question, why do I keep talking about Europe? You came here and you took a course called the International System, and your professor keeps talking about Europe. Why?
Played a big role in shaping the international system.
Because they were more lucky.
They were more lucky? Could be an answer. But more than that, a lot of these things actually happened in Europe, and these guys actually took some lessons from what happened, and they decided, okay, we're going to structure the whole international system. At the time, it's basically Europe. What they think of as the international system is Europe, okay? And so they decided that, all right, what we need is things like international law. Do you know who first started talking about international law? Which nation? Close. No? Nope. I know, usually it should be British, right, when I ask a first question. But it's not Britain now. The Dutch. Oh, yeah. I was talking to a Dutch military guy, and he said, we're a small nation, and all we do is trade, and we only have a navy. So what do you expect us to do? Of course, we want law. Okay? So guys, just start thinking why we need law. To regulate things. To regulate what exactly?
All systems.
If I just kill you this moment, I know that I'm going to be taken to prison in a minute, and I will probably never see the day of light again. Okay, so law actually is for, especially for those who are making money, right? So if you're trading, you want law, you want some regulations, and the Dutch are a trading nation. Okay, and I think my friend's explanation was excellent. He said, what else could we do? You know, we're a very small nation, and we always struggle with the sea. So we always have to struggle so that our country will survive. So the best thing we can do is trade. We make money, so we become rich. But to be able to become rich, we needed international law. So imagine this. Forget the killing example. That was a horrible example. But let's just say that I decided to sell you this. But then, just as you were buying it, okay, don't hold it too firm, I just took it back. Oh, you were like, oh, but I already paid for it. I already got the money from you. Now, what are you going to do if there's no law? And let's assume that I'm one country, you're another country, And if there's no international law, how do we do trade? Okay? Guys, this is going to show you that international law is a product of the rule or norm of sovereignty. When states decided that, you know, we don't want the nations to die, we don't want you to interfere in my own business, let me do my own thing, then you need some regulations to establish the relations between these two states, okay? And the Dutch, it's Grotius actually, who writes on War and Peace and argues that there should be international rules of conduct in wars and in trade, okay? So I gave examples from killing and I gave examples from buying stuff. So it's wars and it is trade that made it really urgent for states to have some kind of international law, okay? So isn't it nice that we're trying to regulate our killing? I always thought it is. So after international law becomes an item on the agenda of states, you have more economic and political expansion. You have migration and colonies, 1600s. The first colony in Virginia is established. And like I said before, disease conquers the new world. It's well, not only disease, but also wars conquers the new world. And then I'm going to talk about balance of power. You've heard of this in your IR classes. What's balance of power? Go back to your IR theory courses, if you took any.
States are trying to overcome each other's power through agreements, military agreements.
Okay, states are trying to overcome each other's power. They're trying to create a balance between one another by getting into agreements, you said. Who's going to tell me what that is? The term for it, the IR. Treaties? So what are you with the other state? Alliance. Okay. So balance of power is about making alliances. You could make treaties, agreements, or you could get into internal balancing. You can try to get yourself stronger so that you will catch up with other states' power. But what happens from 1550s until 1750s for about 200 years is some kind of struggle of power. Portugal is an actor at first. You all remember Portugal with the ship now because you saw the picture of the caravel, right? So Portugal was once a powerful state, and then it becomes less powerful because its political system does not catch up with the rest of the European states. The Dutch and the English keep fighting with each other for a while. Why is that? Why is the Dutch and the English fighting? Yes?
Because they're both naval powers.
They're both naval powers. So the best thing to do in that situation is get rid of the other naval power. Because every time you're going somewhere from the sea, you're facing the Dutch ships. So the Dutch and the English are fighting on sea. Okay? So you're going to Africa and you have to deal with the Dutch. You're going elsewhere by sea, you're facing the English. So there is a fighting going on between the Dutch and the English. How about Spain? I told you that Spain was powerful. Spain actually sent, remember Isabel and Ferdinand financed the trips, the excursions to the Americas. What happened to Spain afterwards? Yeah.
Well, after the Great Armada War, they slowed down, and I believe there was Carl V also the king of Spain is Carlos I.
Mm-hmm. So spare me the details. What happened to Spain? Slowly declined, especially politically and militarily, yes?
They cannot turn their money into investments.
Okay, so they're not, because the political system is not sound, the economic system does not become so well as the English and the Dutch. And besides, their navy becomes old and they don't innovate. And in time, Spain also loses Netherlands. Netherlands is a colony of Spain, okay, at first. And once Netherlands becomes a huge power, Spain is no longer as strong a power after 1579. Okay, so the English and Netherlands and fight against one another, and they're trying to beat each other up. But these two do that because they're both navy powers, right? Naval powers. The others, France versus the Habsburgs. Remember the Holy Roman Empire? French versus basically the nations led by Germans are fighting on the continent. Guys, I want you to remember this for the rest of the course. Because if you are a continental power, you will most likely be fighting a lot with other continental powers. And the disadvantage of continental powers is the fighting is always taking place on your own land. Why is that bad?
On production, agricultural production.
You are getting hurt.
You keep getting beaten on your own land. Hey, you have to rebuild, build and rebuild all over all the time. Okay, so that's not good. That's not nice. The advantage with the naval powers is they take the war elsewhere. Okay, so here is a geographical advantage that I will mention for England all the time. Okay, it's very difficult to beat England up. Now, as these happen, how many people do you think wars kill?
Sorry?
How many people do you think wars kill?
Depends on
Thousands.
Depends on the
Okay.
technology.
Depends on the technology. So far, with the technology that we're talking about, I'll give you some numbers. Let me find my numbers. Okay.
An average battle, a few thousands.
Yes. But the interesting thing is, in 1600s to 1700s, you have, before 1600s, on average, at most 20 to 50,000 people killed in wars. Okay? From 1600s to 1700s, let me give you a few numbers. War of Spanish Succession. More than 1 million people die. Okay? What's that? Yes, from 1701 until 1713, about 1 million people dies. This is in 12 years, okay? It's not a very long time. A lot of people start dying. And in War of Austrian Succession, that is from 1739 to 1748, about 400,000 people die. War of the League of Augsburg, about 700,000 people die. And so I'm going to tell you that the increase in about 100 years is about 500,000 people, okay? So many more people are dying in wars. Why? Technology. So another main theme of the course, technology gives us, thanks to technology, we're able to kill more people in the world now, right? So with technology, with innovations in military technology, such as the invention of cannon, we have more people dead, okay, all at once. So, guys, the wars are getting more and more severe. So that means they're getting bloodier, more people are dying. And, oh, I found my numbers now, okay. From 1500 to 1600, the most severe war costed 90,000 lives. Okay, now I got the numbers. And the average war was close to 20,000 battle deaths. Okay, war is what takes for a long time, and there are several battles in each war, right? So the total would amount to 90,000, okay, from 1500s to 1600s. After that, the number will go about 10 times more. So more people are dying as technology gets better and better. Another thing is, armies are trained better. Before, you're actually conscribing the people, or you're just grabbing whoever you can. Now, I get Gilad, right, Orkun, Kıvanç, to go to war with me. They're not trained. Well, we're hoping you're not trained yet, right? So I take you to war with me, and the only thing that I'm thinking is, the more soldiers I have, the better I do, because they're not trained. So as they die, I need other soldiers, right? So I'm basically sacrificing people's lives so that I can win wars.
But how is that good?
Well, that's not good. As technology increases, or as technology gets better, I don't sacrifice more people. I actually try to win the war with technology. That's the difference, okay? So I'm basically losing a lot of people in wars because of technology. Now, guys, I already told you that there is an ongoing struggle for power between the English and the Dutch, and between the French and the Germans, or the nations led by the Germans. And so we're actually talking about a struggle for hegemony. What's hegemony? Another IR term.
The main power, or the strongest power?
To be the strongest power, right? To be the power. That was actually my question last week. Who do you think is the hegemon now? I just asked it as, who do you think is the strongest power now? Okay? A hegemon, then, there is a struggle for being a hegemon now. But the difference is, we're not talking about the whole world now. We're talking about Europe and European colonies. Okay? So that's what we're talking about at this point. Now, you can be, well, but here's the problem though. At the time, you can be either a hegemon on the sea or a hegemon on the land. You can't be both at the time. How about now? You can?
And air and space.
Okay, now we have different domains added. Air, forces, space, technology.
There's also media.
There's also media, okay. Who's actually better able to use the media, right? Since Gulf War, we actually are using the media in our wars as well. So now we have to actually, a state has to be good at not only sea, but also land and air and media, communication, everything that you can think of, education, right? So when you look at development indexes of states, you're actually looking at how many babies were born, how many of those babies died, right? There are several different indicators now of being a hegemon. Some of you said US is the new hegemon, and some of you said China is the new hegemon. So when you make a comparison, you actually have to make a good comparison, if you want to make a comparison, that is, right? And you have to take into account all of these different things, which brings me to role of population size, okay? Guys, the number of people are increasing. As we're speaking in history, the number of people are increasing. As you have more wars, a lot of people die, but new ones are born, and as the population size increases, that actually becomes another indicator of who's going to be the hegemon, okay? Now, if I make a comparison between the US and China, all of you will say, well, China, with its population, huge population size, it has an advantage. What's the problem with Europe? No one says Europe is going to be the next hegemon. Why is that? Birth rate is on the decline. And the population is getting older and older. After several decades, I think Germany said that it will need workers again from all over the world. Okay? So population size at the time, even at the time in 1700s, is a huge factor in who's going to be ruling in the system or who's going to dominate the international system. Okay? So that's another thing that we're noticing. You don't have to remember this, but I'm just showing you that these were the population sizes. And this is all from Sprout. I think it's in your reader. All right. I am actually going 1 century in 5 minutes. I know. But I'm actually telling you all you need to know, okay? Don't worry about the other stuff. These are what's necessary for our course. That's it. Another thing, another important thing, I'm going to talk about this so much for the rest of the semester. Don't drop the course after seeing that. Industrialization. What is it? Industrialization. A huge term. Fancy.
That's expansion of global industries.
Okay.
Production.
It's about production. Industrialization is about, everything is about production, isn't it? Agriculture was about production too. But industrialization is about the amount of production. Industrialization is about machines, right? So industrialization is about increasing production by using technology. Factories, okay? Factories are extremely important at this point in history. Who's the first to industrialize? England, right? Okay. So now, from today on, England will be our first for many things. Does it happen all of a sudden? It takes a while, right? So when I write 1750, is that the time that Britain industrialized? No. Okay. So it accumulates, right? So industrialization is a process. It probably started about 100 years before or more than that, and slowly England industrializes. By 1750, I would argue that England industrialized to a great extent. Why is it important that England industrialized first? Industrialization gives you advantages. Militarily, economically.
Since you have naval power, also you can spread all over the world.
Okay, so for creating an imperial power, to industrialize first is a huge advantage, right? One thing that scholars discuss a lot is, is there any way to get rid of this disadvantage of industrializing late? Turkey industrialized late. You guys are from Turkey. You all watched last season Hanımın Çiftliği. That's a show that a lot of people watched, and that was actually about industrialization in Turkey, right? So this guy was bringing all these different things to his town, and that actually led to factories And once you have factories, you have workers. Once you have workers, you have workers protesting for their rights, and then you have workers' rights. So industrialization is a process that leads to a process. And in that process, you actually get richer, your technology becomes better, right? So you shift from agriculture to manufacturing. What's manufacturing? Okay, I'll ask you to think about it until Thursday, okay? I'm going to continue with the historical background. If you haven't finished Strayer, please finish Strayer. So by Thursday, hopefully I'm going to try to finish this, and then we will move on to theories. Thank you.